Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Burger. I'm Caroline Romo, the Executive Director of the New Mexico Beef Council, and I am here with Megan and Garrett Foote over here in Clovis, or near Clovis, Curry County at least, right? I got the right county?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Texaco is the address.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was thinking, and then as I was driving, we kind of, my phone suddenly said I was an hour late, and that made me a little nervous. But
Oh, yeah, we bounce back and forth here pretty regularly.
Being so close to the state line.
Yeah, I thought about that. I thought, should I have asked? No, surely they would have known I would have made that mistake if it. So cool. Well, thank you guys for having me, and thank you for being willing to do a podcast. You guys want to introduce yourself first and kind of talk about your background, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. So I'm Megan Foote. I run the meat side of our business, so the retail and wholesale beef side. And as far as background, my background is actually in ag communications and marketing. So I worked for a small crisis communications firm for several years before we started this business back in, I think we launched it in 2020, like fall of 2020. So it's kind of an interesting time to enter into this space. And I'm sure we'll get into more of that later. But I handle the meat side, and then Garrett handles the live cattle side of the business.
Yep, I'm Megan's husband, Garrett Foote. I grew up here in Texaco, New Mexico, and we've moved back to our family operation, which is primarily a stocker cattle operation and a farming operation here in eastern New Mexico and West Texas predominantly. I went to school at Texas Tech and graduated with an animal science degree, and then decided to stay there and go to law school and practice law in Amarillo for about a year, and then moved back, and we've been back here since 2019. Yeah, and just doing the same, farming, running stocker cattle, and we have a cow-calf operation, and just kind of keep growing in those avenues.
So you guys, a marketer and a lawyer, that probably actually helps you in business. Both of those backgrounds, right?
Yeah.
Yes, respectively. I think Garrett's background in laws helps him as they grow the business in making, strategic decisions, even though he's not practicing day to day. I think that's been, hugely beneficial as he's come back. And then on my side of things, when we started the meat business, it was really handy to have that skill set in my pocket because we were able to keep overhead costs really low. When I quit my job and we dove into starting this, we didn't have to outsource and pay for somebody to do a website for us or social media campaigns and things like that as we were trying to kind of build up some brand awareness around the business. So that was really helpful.
Yeah, I think on the attorney side, mostly I tell people a lot of times I forget that I'm an attorney until somebody brings it up or we're sitting there talking about background or something, just because I'm not really thinking about legal stuff most of the day, but I think it does end up changing your mindset a little bit. I guess just seeing enough ways that things can go wrong kind of gives you a mindset of, hey, maybe we need to do this a little bit differently and maybe prevent some issues on down the road. So yeah, it's been good. It's been good.
I think it's really helpful too on like the, land contracts and partnership, the boring paperwork side of things, I guess I would say.
Yeah, I still use it occasionally for land documents, leases, just different contracts and stuff.
It's handy
Absolutely.
to not have to pay somebody to do
Right.
that.
Right.
But, you pay for what you get. You
Yeah.
Cheap attorney.
Well, I think that's neat. And it's neat, too, that you guys kind of went and tried and did other things, but still the cattle business brought you back, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Our family moved here, I think originally it was on my dad's side back in the 70s. And then my dad and my uncle moved here in the 80s and helped run the family operation here and been here ever since. So it's where I grew up. All of our family came from Oklahoma and then came to New Mexico after that. So
you want to tell me kind of more, so you've, covered the history, but talk about the operation.
So we're primarily a stocker cattle operation. We our big goal is we buy cattle weighing between 3 and 650 mostly, and we grow those cattle and then market those as yearlings. The steers weighing, between 850 and 9 typically, or can typically be a little bit lighter sometimes, and then heifers from 750 to 800 pounds. our primary goal with those is grazing them on wheat pasture. So we farm right here in eastern New Mexico and in West Texas, and so we graze a lot of our own wheat. But we also lease up a bunch of pasture from people in the area that we've been doing stuff. Some that we've been doing stuff for a long time, and some that's new every year. We're constantly trying to find new lease pastures and people to run cattle with. So that's the primary part of our business and what we've done for a long time. We also feed out some cattle in the feed yards in West Texas and up into Kansas and in Oklahoma as well. And that's something that we've kind of added to increasingly over the last few years. I'd say a larger percentage of our inventory we've retained a certain amount of ownership of going into the feed yard. And so that's been an area that we've grown quite a bit in. And then the last 2 years, we've really grown on the cow-calf side. We've been running some cows here in New Mexico, but recently we ended up leasing a property out in Florida, and we run some cows out there. We run some cows in Georgia as well, and Mississippi and Oklahoma. So we're kind of more spread out. We've always been fairly spread out, but on the cow-calf side, we just kind of keep looking for opportunities and places to run cows, and we've added a lot of cows that we run in this area as well in New Mexico and Texas. So that's been a pretty cool place to expand, especially given the current market for calves. So.
Right. Good time. It's a good expansion period. Mm-hmm. Well, that's neat. Well, what about, so you kind of talk about the wheat pastures and that's kind of the primary thing, I think you said. Is that pretty seasonal? And I guess, is it, different, I'm assuming maybe even different seasonality now that you've got Florida and Georgia and all of that, but.
So yeah, to kind of touch on that. Yeah, we primarily start planting our wheat in late August, early September. And we're typically on that wheat depending on the weather. We're lucky here that we have dry land farm ground, but we also have irrigation. So we are able, even in dry years, to at least have some wheat. It may not look as good as other years. This year was a great start to the year. We had a tremendous amount of rain up front, and then it shut off. And as you were driving in, you probably saw how rough it looks and dry around. It went from the best year to one of the worst. And so, it's seasonal. Typically, we're coming off the wheat the end of May or 1st of June. And then what we do with part of our farm ground the rest of the time is we plant hay grazer mostly, and we kind of rotate around where we plant hay grazer at. And we have some grow yards here as well that we raise feed for starting the cattle in the pens. And then a lot of those cattle during the summer, we will run out on grass and stuff as well. And so, it's pretty seasonal. And then, what is cool about, talking about Florida and these other cow-calf operations is being able to bring those calves back to our operation. Just kind of, it's allowed us to really vertically integrate, where we can start off with the mama cow and the bull and raise a calf, and then bring that calf back and run it through our stocker operation. And then we have options on whether to sell them at that point or retain ownership through the feed yard. And that's been a pretty fun part of it that we've gotten into. So. Absolutely.
And you said vertical integration, so then we have to go to the end result, mm-hmm. right? So you guys have gone both directions in that by going to the cow calf and then also selling meat direct to consumers. Yep. So maybe the background of that, you said started it in 2020, fall of 2020, which I think now I've heard of a few people did it kind of out of necessity or out of realization that there was a need, right? There was demand for local beef. There was demand for there was processing delays and problems with that because of COVID and all that. So tell me about that and how that's kind of evolved.
Yeah, so I think Garrett said we moved back in 2019. 2020 hit. I was still working for the crisis communications firm that I had been with, and we were in the midst of a lot of crises for several different clients as, the world was shutting down. And in that time, or I guess prior to that, when we moved back in 2019, we had kind of, Garrett was coming back with the focus of helping his dad grow 10-foot cattle. And so it was getting to the point, there was an inflection point there where Garrett had to come back, or he was going to have to hire more people on. And that meant, a smaller piece of the pie for us later on if we wanted to come back. So we came back, and his focus was on his dad's business, but we wanted to find a way to kind of diversify our income was something that, we were doing independently. And so we had kind of tossed around the idea of doing, direct to consumer meats. There were some people, it was kind of starting to become big. Then fast forward to COVID hit. They had always sold whole and half beeves forever, but a handful a year. I would say it was not a ton. So I was working my communications job, and then Garrett calls me one day and he's like, hey, can you make like a social media post, like put a graphic together pushing these, because we've been getting a ton of calls for whole and half beef orders. And then that just continued to grow as grocery store shelves were not being replenished and people were out of stuff. There was also, we were seeing an increasing interest on the consumer side of people like feeling less comfortable about shopping in the grocery store, unfortunately, and then feeling like, okay, we've got to know where our food is coming from. And so there was that interest on top of supply and demand issues that we were fielding a bunch of these calls. And one thing that, we had talked about was for every 10 calls that you got, you might have sold one whole or half beef, but there were people who maybe they weren't ready to invest financially in that much meat, or they didn't have the space for it, but they would have bought, 10, 15, 20 pounds. And so we were like, well, maybe now's the time to kind of get this rolling, and we'll start selling, individual cuts. And the more we started looking at that, we decided, well, if we're going to do it, we're really going to do it, and we're going to dive off into it. So I quit my job.
We were drinking wine, I think.
Yeah, it was probably
how all great ideas come.
Yeah. Had a little bit of liquid courage to decide, hey, we've been talking about this. We can keep talking about it, or we can just do it. And so we went ahead. Like I said, I quit my job, built the website, got some stuff going on, on the back side of the business. Fortunate for him being an attorney, he got all the legal stuff together. And so we got all the paperwork lined out, and then officially launched in the fall of 2020. And so when we started, we were selling through the website. It was COVID. You could do contactless pickup. We would ship our meat all over the country. And then we had a little cargo trailer that we rigged up with freezers and lights, and a little cooler and heater in there. And I would pull that into town and sell meat on the side of the road 2 days a week. So people could pre-order and pick it up from this little trailer, or they could come and shop off of the trailer. So I did that for about 2 years, and went to some farmers markets and different events in New Mexico and Texas and Oklahoma. And so through that process, we were able to build up a steady customer base here locally, especially. And we hit a point where we started to plateau a little bit, and we had to decide, okay, me sitting on the road selling meat was not something I wanted to do long term. So we had to decide of like, are we going to do this? Are we going to hire somebody else and just, keep it as is? Or do we want to continue to see, what opportunities there are in growing the business? And for us, the biggest hang up was the fact that we were selling frozen meat. So we were getting our beef processed at a USDA facility, and they were going through and processing and fabbing out individual retail cuts, vacuum sealing them, and freezing them. And so we were selling them that way, but we'd have a lot of people that would come in that are like, oh, I wanted to buy some ribeyes, but I wanted them for dinner in an hour. Or they maybe wanted what we had, but they wanted the cut portioned differently or prepared differently. And so there were little things where it was starting to be like, we're kind of missing the mark on what our customers are wanting. And so that was when we decided, okay, we've been steadily busy enough. I think there's an opportunity for us to come in and fill a gap. And another thing that we noticed too, and as our customer base was growing, was that there was a surprising amount of people in our area in Clovis and Curry County that were driving to Lubbock and Amarillo, and some people that were consistently going all the way to Midland, Texas, because they felt like that was, they had to leave here in order to get like a high quality, prime quality grade product. And so we were like, okay, that gave us a little more confidence in feeling like there's a niche market here that we can come in and fill the gap on, while keeping those dollars here within our local economy and not losing them to Texas. So that gave us a little bit of confidence in going ahead and taking the risk and diving off. And in 2022, I think in November of 2022, pretty close to Thanksgiving. I remember that distinctly of like, we launched our retail store right before like a big holiday rush.
Started off with a bang.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
And mind you, like neither one of us necessarily have a meat background. So, cattle and ag, and coming in knowing about beef and eating a lot of beef and having a lot of personal preferences, but it's a whole different ballgame when you're talking about, the meat science side of things and even retail specifically. So big learning curve there, but fortunately, we had a really great team of people to be able to tap into. And we went to school at Tech, and Garrett judged on the livestock team. And we had a lot of friends that went through the meats program at Texas Tech too. And so we've had we've got a great network, I think, of people that we've been able to tap into that have been really helpful in kind of growing that business and avoiding some mistakes, but being able to fix things and mitigate pretty quickly whenever we do run into problems. But yeah, the retail side's been great. So we opened up the fresh retail store in 2022, started offering our homegrown beef on the counter fresh. We've got a team of butchers that'll slice, dice, cut, prepare anything any way you want it, whether it's 1 pound, 100 pounds. We've got all the machinery and everything to do that. And so that's been, I think, one of the big draws outside of not only are we offering a different product, being able to offer local fresh beef just right off the meat counter. I think one thing that also draws customers in, especially like an older generation, is the customer service aspect of having them being able to walk in the store and feel like they've got, their guy, their butcher that knows exactly how they want something cut, and they come in every week and they've got a personal relationship with them, which I think we're starting to see less and less of that in the big box stores that are doing away with their meat counter, and they've just got shelves full of, prepackaged, pre-cut products. So that more intimate customer relationship, I think, is another big draw for the business. But so we offer our beef. We source in other premium beef cuts as well, because we'll run out of a lot of things. So we're really transparent whenever we put stuff out of this is premium sourced product or this is our homegrown stuff. We have customers that come in that are, they only want to buy our homegrown beef, and we're like, great, here's what we've got today that's available. And then we have other people that come in, they're like, we trust you guys and we want a really great quality steak. And so we try to, make sure that we've got enough of everything so that we're meeting customers' demands. And then we sell a little bit of chicken. We bring in a prime pork product that's really popular. We're, I think, the only retailer within 500 miles that offers that. We fly in fresh seafood 1 week out of the month. It's caught and shipped overnight out of Florida. So that's a big draw that brings people in from, other towns, and they come for the seafood, but they buy a little bit of beef and other stuff too, which is great. We've got seasoning sauces, home and gift items. We make our own in-house sausage and brats. Those are really popular. We've got a lot of New Mexico green chile added products, a lot of marinated meats and things like that are really popular. Some specialty items. We try to come up with unique stuff that you can't get anywhere else in town. That's kind of our focus. Is we're more of a premium niche market where we'll bring in a case of random things like chicken feed or I brought in gator and duck and things like that most people wouldn't expect to be able to find in a little town.
Yeah, we like to eat good, so whatever we sell, that's kind of the motto. Is something that we would eat, so.
We don't really, like our focus is on bringing in high quality stuff, and if it's not something that wouldn't meet the standards of stuff that we would want to eat or serve our families, it's not going to be something that we're offering in the store.
Yeah, well, I think that's exactly why people want to support a family business, right? Is that care that you put into it, and then even no matter rancher that sells to consumers or not, you want to know that their family's eating that beef too, or that product
Absolutely.
too. That's a really special part of it. Well, I feel like we've covered so much already. I'm excited, but we talk about what's your biggest, not to be negative, but either side of the business. What's one of the biggest challenges that you guys face?
I'll let you kick off that one.
I would say, I don't know. I've thought about this. Some days it feels like there's a a lot of challenges. But I'd like as far as the biggest challenge I would say is as we've grown and kind of diversified and done the vertical integration that we've talked about is just trying to figure out how to manage all of that and, make sure that we're doing a great job in every sector of that. And a lot of it does start with having really good people that work with us and work for us. And so that's really what we've put a lot of focus on. It's just when you're growing, you're really trying to, develop that and try to get it to a spot to where it needs to be. Our biggest problem is about the time we get close to that, we add on again. So we just always stay a little bit uncomfortable. But overall, I would say that's probably the biggest struggle that I go through.
Yeah, there's just, I think on his side of the bit, like, from my perspective, looking at what they do, there's so many moving parts all the time, being in so many different, areas of the industry and having to focus on different partnerships and cattle turned out there's just, there truly is the opportunity for something to go wrong every minute of the day. So it's just managing a lot of little fires while, trying to not let it slow you down from growing and continuing to do what you do.
And trying to stay organized and just, you have I feel like there'd probably be a lot of people that would agree with this. It's hard to, as you grow, you have to hand more stuff off to other people. And sometimes, even though they're well qualified to do it, it's difficult to make yourself do that. And so I'm constantly in my mind, like, it's okay. Let them do that. And so that's probably the biggest, that was what comes to mind anyways.
And I think that's a lot with like any business, like not even just in the cattle industry or the meat industry. I think those are like growing pains for any small business and for entrepreneurs. And on our side of the business, on the retail meat side, I think it's kind of a lot of the same. Like a small business, there's always something going wrong. And so you got to, start your day just knowing there's going to be problems. We're going to get through it. But I think thinking about it from a big picture, it's the challenges that we've faced on the meat side have been different in each season that we've been in and as the business has grown. And so early on, like inventory management was really difficult because as you're trying to grow your business and kill more cattle, for anybody that does that, you have a substantial amount of ground beef every time you slaughter one head in comparison to the amount of tenderloin and ribeye and all of those, premium middle meats that most people who are coming in and wanting to spend a little bit of extra money on when they're buying homegrown meat, they're willing to do that on those cuts, a little less enticed to pay more per pound for ground beef. And so you end up with a lot of that inventory and you can't justify continuing to kill more cattle to meet the demand of your middle meats and just have all that ground beef stack up. And so that was a problem early on that we had to solve for. And I think that's when I talk to a lot of other people who have started direct to consumer meat businesses, that's usually kind of the make or break point, is they get to a point where they just aren't able to move all of their inventory. And so we've been really fortunate when we started the retail side of the store and we've got the cut room and all of the different machinery. We're able to kind of look and say, okay, we're really long on this product this month or this week. What else can we do with it to market it? How can we add seasoning to it, marinate it? And so having our own facility allows us to do that. Whereas, if you're just getting it processed, packaged, and frozen through someone else, you don't have the flexibility. If people aren't interested in that product in that season, it's a lot more difficult to move. So we've managed through that. A challenge that we're facing right now, I think, as we have grown, we've got our shop set up. And I think that early on when we were just online and just, selling out of the trailer and just starting off, people still associated us with more of like a specialty product. Whereas now I think we're almost seen a little bit more as like another grocery store in town. And so with that, while I think people do appreciate, the products that we offer, being able to get, good quality products and have a variety of different options they're not getting other places, there still is the expectation of a price competitiveness with all of the big grocery stores that are just a couple of blocks up the road. And so that's something that's been really challenging, especially, with where the economy's been this last year and beef prices have continued to go up. And so I think that's a challenge that we work through, and it's hard because, when customers come in and are complaining about, prices, that hits me, my customers. We feel bad. We're not, trying to price gouge anybody, but, our margins are as thin as they ever have been, but we're competing with, Albertsons down the street who can discount something because they can discount their meat pretty heavily just to draw people into the store because they know they're going to buy a lot of other stuff. And so we get that all the time of, they're selling 99-cent briskets up the road. And I'm like, we would if we could, but we can't. We wouldn't be in business. So that's kind of been a big current struggle of figuring out, making smart decisions for the business, not, hurting our margins, but still trying to stay competitive too and keep product moving.
I would say, I don't blame them for price shopping around. Right. It's just, that is the difficult part of the direct to consumer side is your expenses are much higher than the packers when they pack meat, and so your margins are thinner when you try to compete. I get it. That's our challenge to have to get through, and so.
I mean, and what really stinks is, for us, we're cherry picking out of our, Garrett mentioned that we retain ownership in some of the feed yards, but we also keep some back that we feed and finish out here. In the grand scheme of things and the number of cattle that we're moving and selling, it's a small number that gets funneled into the store. But we're cherry picking, trying to cherry pick good cattle that we think are going to grade well. However, sometimes, some of those cattle are still coming in choice or low choice, and whether those carcasses are select, choice, or prime, we have the same amount of cost in the cattle, the feed, and the processing cost. And so the big guys are doing it for pennies on the dollar, whereas our processing costs are substantially higher. And so, we've got a much higher break even, but I've got to discount, select or choice product or find some other way to move it and to do something with it, because our target market and the people that are coming in and shopping with us, they're primarily looking for like a prime or a high choice quality steak. So we've got to get really creative on how do we, not lose money on those other products, but find some other ways to move them, so that we're not just having to turn it into ground beef and just sell it at our break even. And so that's a constant struggle.
I get to hear about it at home if I pick out a select.
As you say, that there's your livestock
that falls
judging.
Back on me.
Yeah.
Your livestock judging buddies would get after you for that,
My
right?
butchers are always really quick to come to his defense, though, and they'll text me a picture and they'll like, man, this load of cattle that we get, or this load of beef that we just got in, tell Garrett he did a great job. Yeah. They're like, I'm sure you don't tell him that enough. And I'm like, I will make sure to give him props tonight.
Yeah, that swells my head up.
Yeah. That's great. Well, I think one of the takeaways that you said is that being comfortable, being uncomfortable, right? That's, I think, sound business advice and goes through anything. I've definitely heard that before, but it's still hard to do.
Yes.
And then, with the pricing and the cuts and all of that, I think the last podcast, the joke was somebody called and said, can't you just run it through the ribeye machine? And so having to explain that, no, we can't. If you buy a whole animal, you're getting, different cuts and different things. You can't get it. My husband and I were even talking about, if you buy a quarter beef, it's hard. How many ribeyes are you getting? Not very many, right?
It's a lot of ground beef.
Yeah, it's a lot of ground beef. And so, anyways, that's
I always love when I get those
just
calls.
Just a couple fillets.
I want to buy a half a beef, but I want it all in ribeyes and just a little bit of ground beef. And I'm like, keep pushing.
Yeah.
Usually I'm like, okay, we'll work out some other deals for you. You tell me how many pounds of, ribeye you're really looking to get. We'll figure out some bulk discounts and some other options, but that's just not possible.
But that has been pretty cool with the store too, is, the people that don't necessarily know that or haven't been exposed to that prior, then now they can come into the store and talk with somebody directly and show them on a chart, like, here's how much, here's where the ribeyes come from, here's how much you're going to get off of that, and here's why you get so much hamburger meat if you do order a whole or a half beef. So I think that's pretty neat too.
Yeah, and a significant amount of advocacy that you're doing for the beef industry, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's been another big draw, as people have, learned that we're there. And, it's crazy because we've been open for, 3 years now, going on 4 years. And we still have a lot of local people that drive, and our business has increased by like 30% month to month, which has been, crazy and really gratifying and neat to see. But there's still so many people that are like, I drive past you every day and I didn't know you were here. But they're so excited to be able to come in and know exactly where the food that they're buying is coming from, and to have access to us to be able to ask those questions. And I'm not in the store quite as much as what I used to, but we're super transparent. My employees, are pretty knowledgeable about what we do and how we operate. But I also am like, give them my email, give them my phone number. I'm happy to answer any questions directly. And so we get a lot of, I think the normal stuff that you would expect, as far as myths and things that are out there online, stuff that people have seen on social media. And so I would say like some of the top concerns or things that people are coming in asking about when they're wanting to buy direct from a producer are, conventional versus grass-fed. That's a big hot topic. Antibiotic usage, hormone usage. And then I would say number one out of all three of those is, what are you feeding them? What are they getting fed? I can't tell you how many people, and I haven't seen this particular video, but I've heard enough people reference it that there's some video on Facebook where cattle are being fed like basically recycled trash. I'm like, that sounds like AI, or it's something in a different country. Like, I can assure you there would be no instance where that would make sense for a producer to want to do that. Because at the end of the day, it's in our best interest to make sure that, we're meeting their needs nutritionally, that we're treating them humanely, that when it comes to, from like a doctoring perspective, when it comes to antibiotics or anything that we're giving them, those things are expensive. And so people will come in and say, is this meat, has it been pumped full of antibiotics? And so I'm like, antibiotics are really expensive.
Right. Well, that's a great point.
That's not something, it doesn't make sense for us to do that. But just, our protocol here is just like, if your kids were sick and they need it, we're going to give them antibiotics or treat them, as opposed to the alternative of taking the risk and letting them die. But there are, protocols that, withdrawal periods and things that we make sure that we're exceeding that so that there's nothing that gets transferred into the meat. And that's, I think, just a common misconception too. I think people have this interpretation that meat is pumped full of antibiotics when, there isn't allowed to be meat or antibiotics in meat that goes on any shelves, whether that's the grocery store shelves or something that, a producer is selling, direct to a consumer on their own. And so I think having the opportunity to sit down and explain those things in a way where we're not like trying to force our product. So going back to the conventional versus grass-fed, we sell pasture-raised, grain-finished beef. And I think a lot of times something that I've learned over the last several years is from the consumer standpoint, when they hear homegrown or locally raised, their mind automatically goes to, oh, it must be 100% grass-fed. Like they associate the two. And so I'm always very transparent and very quick to be like, nope, that, this is how, we do things on our operation. Here's what we feed them. It's, a lot of products that are sourced in the area. We've got a nutritionist, and Garrett can go a little more in depth on that on the actual feeding side, but we've got a nutritionist that's, formulating a ration. It's, there's a lot of stuff that we're farming and growing, so we know exactly what they're getting fed. And usually as I'm breaking that down, and then we have copies of, some of the studies that universities have done on, the advantages of grass-fed versus conventional and really breaking down the nutritional differences between the two. Usually when I share that information, then we let them know of like, hey, okay, so here's what we have to offer. If you're interested in maybe trying it out, great. We'd love to have you as a customer. We'd love for you to try our products. If not, I'm more than happy to give you some business cards or get you in contact with some other producers who do offer 100% grass-fed and finished beef. But sometimes you have like, seniors, for example, is I would say one demographic that comes in a lot that's like, telling me that I just went to a doctor's appointment and they recommended that I go on 100% grass-fed. A lot of times 100% grass-fed and finished beef is not accessible or affordable for everybody. And so we'll work with them of, kind of trying to figure, I'm not a nutritionist or a doctor by any means, but, trying to help them find some things that fit within their budget that are still, lean or meet the nutritional needs that they're looking for. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of that is balance too. But getting back to the root of your question, I think once we have the opportunity to kind of present them with some of the facts and different options and do it in a way where it's not like we're shoving our agenda down their throat, we're just letting them know of like, hey, here's what we actually do, so that it's not, something that they learned off of social media. Most of the time they appreciate that. And I would say 99% of the time they're usually open to shopping with us. And those are typically the customers when we take the time to really educate them and answer their questions. I've found that those are the guys that are coming and shopping with us 2 or 3 days out of the week. Like they are very, very loyal customers. Occasionally we'll have, the 1% that's like, I'd still really like to explore the option of, getting something that's, never been given antibiotics or that's 100% grass-fed. And we're more than happy to put them in contact with other producers, whether they're in the area or a little further off, that can get them what they need. Yeah. I think it builds a sense of trust too.
Yeah. I think another point that we always really try to make is, you shouldn't, like, coming to us, if you're coming to us for the service that we provide or some of the products that we provide, that's awesome. We encourage you to do it, but don't come in out of fear that what you're going and buying at the grocery store isn't safe, because it is. And we live in probably the safest food country if that's the way of putting it, in the world.
Yes, our food system.
And 99% of the cattle that we run go through go through the general population and go through the grocery stores. And so we never want to advocate that, come to us out of fear. And I think a lot of the meat companies that are doing direct to consumer do a great job of that.
Absolutely. I think my favorite thing is that we live in a country, we live in a time, and a lot of people are able to have food choice, right? We can make food choices. You can do that, and that's usually a luxury or a thing that means you have the means or the time or everything to do that. And so absolutely we support food choice in all ways. And you were talking about the leaner cuts or the things. One of our dietitian on staff talks about, if it says round or loin in the name, that's actually considered USDA lean. And I think you even told me that at the store. So there's, food choices, and then the more informed you are. And it's so cool that you guys are willing to take the time and take the risk of that business and tell people and inform people, and not in a way of elitism or anything like that. It's just, here's the facts. Here's what we know. Here's what we do. And that's exactly why it's cool that you guys are on the podcast. That's the goal, right? We want to talk about what's going on and the truth out there, because we don't want them to get information from that one Facebook video.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and I think there's been a lot, and this isn't recent. I feel like this has been an issue for the last 10 years, but so much labeling confusion on food products, not just meat, but just food products in general. And so there's just, I feel like, so much noise out there that it's really hard. I think as producers and people in the ag industry, it can sometimes get defensive and feel like we're constantly being attacked. But when you think about it from the consumer standpoint, there's so much noise out there that they're having to sift through. And especially now with AI and stuff online, it's like, what's real, what's not. And so I think it's just a matter of us being patient and trying to get the message out there, but not do it in a forceful way, and be really smart about, how we're advocating for what we do. Because to Garrett's point of, majority, and I would say that we're not the only ones in that same situation that also happen to sell direct to consumer. I would say most people who are selling their own meat, majority of the cattle that they're raising are probably not going into their meat business. They still have to market it through other avenues. So, to fearmonger people into, if you want to feel good about what you're feeding your family, buy directly from a farmer or rancher. which without saying it kind of leads people to believe, oh, it's not safe to go shop from the grocery store or buy something from one of the big packers, when that's really what, keeps the lights on and food on the table for most farmers and ranchers. So it's, the way we've approached it since we started the business is what's good for the beef industry as a whole is good for us in our little direct to consumer business. And keeping that perspective, I think, has built a lot of consumer and customer trust and loyalty.
Oh yeah, very well said. And I just always try and reiterate the best way to support a rancher or a farmer is, specifically ranching and the cattle industry. To support the cattle industry is buy beef where you are.
Yes.
Yeah. If that's at the farmer's market, great. If that's, direct to consumer, awesome. But if it's at the grocery store, great. Yeah. That's wonderful. We want beef in your cart.
Yep.
Right.
You're still, if you're buying at the grocery store, you're still helping your local farmers and ranchers.
Absolutely. You're helping build demand. You're helping, like you said, 90% of the product is going there. Mm-hmm. And then even just ordering beef at the restaurants too, mm-hmm. right? We've even started to do some, restaurant features in New Mexico because buying beef where you are is an important part of our industry.
Absolutely.
And that's probably what drives me since I work for the industry. I joked that I work for all of you guys, but it's not a joke. It's true. And if you see me eating out, I will be ordering beef. If you catch me not ordering beef, I am stressed, right?
That'd be a bad look.
That'd be a really bad look, right? No, and it is. It's just the best way to support a rancher is just to order beef. And however you do that, it's again, we live in a place and a world where we can choose. So we love that.
Yep.
Yeah.
What's something you guys are excited about right now in the business?
I've thought about this quite a bit since me and Megan were talking about it last night. I've gotten really excited about the cow calf side of things that we've dove into, and we dove into it pretty hard. I mean, increased our numbers a bunch. So at first it felt like the floodgates were coming on us, but like it's been cool. I love pulling up to a pasture and seeing a bunch of baby calves on the ground and running around, and so I've thoroughly enjoyed that. I started buying Simmental bred heifers about a year ago. It kind of started one of our managers, his kids show, and so me and Megan, we both judge livestock, and so I've always had I just like looking at high quality livestock, I guess, from that standpoint, and so I bought an open heifer, and they went and showed it, and then brought her back and bred her. And then as I'm looking at these sales, I start buying bred females, and then we started calving them out, and then I started buying embryos and setting up recips, and just like anything else we do, I guess, just kind of dove in head first and started figuring it out. And I've been really excited about that. That's kind of my favorite thing to do right before dark, is to go pull through and look at some of those cows and some of those babies that have hit the ground so far. So I've really enjoyed that. That's a little kind of a hobby that's a depreciable asset. So
that's good. Yeah. Well, and
it ties in nicely to everything else.
Well, and it's a tangible asset, right? You can see the genetics, going to the baby, right? You see a calf and you see, oh my gosh, look, that's exactly what I was hoping for.
Yeah.
Sometimes when we talk about genetics on the podcast, on the clips and stuff, people get a little nervous about that, and it sounds scary. And so I always kind of try and take a second now and say that genetics just means we're breeding better animals, right? We're breeding for whether it be the climate or the environment that they're going to live in, or breeding for the cuts that we want to get, or the marbling, or the prime versus choice and select and all of that. So I always want to take a second and say that genetics doesn't have to be scary. And even my original analogy is that it's like when we had the doodle dogs, right? So that you can have a hypoallergenic animal. That's not scary. It's breeding different animals together.
Yeah, it's kind of like the NFL draft, like they run a 40 and you get the speed, and they have the jump height and everything that everybody does. Like it's kind of what we have on cattle. There's a set of EPDs, or a list of genetics, and again, I say that word, but basically kind of gives you a projection of what you think that animal is going to produce, and I guess that'd be the best way I could
Yeah, no, that's
Gives you
perfect.
the data that I think helps you to make long-term decisions for your operation.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
and you didn't touch on the speckled park. Are we leaving that out intentionally?
Yeah. I
This
also
is another
started.
little interesting avenue and hobby that he's really been diving into pretty heavily lately, as I'm seeing credit card charges in Canada pop up quite often.
Yeah, so about a year ago, less than a year ago, I'm not very deep into it. We just had our first little calf crop hit the ground. I don't have very many of them, but they're Speckle Park cattle. I think it ties in pretty cool back to the meat company and kind of that vertical integration to where, Speckle Park animal is one that, from what the studies and stuff I've seen and from the podcast I've listened to, and then I have fed out a couple of them before for a neighbor, but they're very high yielding, high quality grade combination cattle. They have kind of a disposition and kind of a look to them other than their color that I would say is similar to like Angus cattle. But they look wild colored. I mean, most people think when they drive by that, that we're running Longhorn Cross or something. So I've been wanting to put some out in front of my dad's house as he gets a bunch of phone calls, but that's been cool. I dove into a bunch of podcasts and kind of just decided, hey, I'm just going to start buying a few of these and then see if there's any juice to the squeeze. So I started trying it. So we'll see how it goes. I wasn't going to mention it because I'm kind of uncertain how it's going to go over.
But that's something that is exciting because it's fun and it's going to be interesting to see whenever we get to cycle them through the meat business on, how they grade and if that's something that, might be a sustainable avenue for us as we're looking, to be fully vertically integrated.
Trying to do like a high percentage of prime carcasses. And I feel like some of what I've seen is almost, it's not like Wagyu status, but it'd be like an in-between.
Definitely that high prime qualities, which is really interesting.
That's exciting. That is really fun. Well, what's exciting on your side, you think?
The meat business, I feel like year after year we've grown pretty substantially, and we've got a lot of big stuff planned this year. And some of it was goals that we had for last year, but I'll mention it here to hold myself accountable for it this year. But our plans are here in the next couple of months to try to obtain USDA inspection in our facility. And so I think when people hear us talk about that, they think that we're going to start killing our own cattle, and that's not the case. We still get everything processed at a USDA facility in New Mexico and sometimes in Texas. And then we bring back boxed meat and my guys break it down further. Just the way our facility is set up, we'll continue to do that because we don't have rail space, to bring carcasses in and hang them. But what getting that inspection will allow us to do is it's going to open up more market channels for us. And so right now, anything that we cut in our butcher shop has to be sold out that door because we're under the jurisdiction of the health department. We sell a lot of other stuff wholesale that, we're either sourcing in that's USDA inspected or it's, boxed meat coming from our cattle, but coming out of a USDA plant. And so we have a lot of different channels, which can sometimes make inventory management a bit of a struggle because you have somebody that wants something that needs to be labeled or inspected and it isn't. But you have plenty of it over here, but you can't sell it to them legally. Or, we run out of stuff online that can be shipped and we can't ship stuff that we cut. And so getting that inspection status in the store will allow us to have more flexibility on the products that we're offering, meet customers on, the different types of products that they're interested in getting in. So like our green chili added products, we get a lot of people calling and sending us emails wanting us to ship that to them all over the country, but we can't because that's an in-house product right now. So we'll have the flexibility to ship more. We'll be able to work with more restaurant and wholesale customers. We sell a lot of stuff to the schools and the food banks through the New Mexico Grown program, which has been awesome. That has been a really integral part, I think, over the last several years in helping us to grow our business. But what we try to focus on is we work with a lot of the schools in our area. And so there's a lot of small schools that are looking for smaller pack sizes, or they, need to be a little bit more flexible on schedule and their menu and things like that. And so we're not always able to get them what they need because we're having somebody else cut and package it in bulk. And so we'll be able to turn around and do a lot more of that stuff on the fly and meet our customers' needs. And then we've got a refrigerated van that we bought this last year, and we're planning on having an ordering app. And so you'll be able to order through Toast online, and we'll deliver to customers in Lubbock and Amarillo. So right now we can't sell or deliver the stuff we do in the store across state lines, but once we get that inspection, assuming and hoping that all of that goes through and everything goes good, we're on the final stages of our HACCP plan right now, but it's going to open up a lot more market opportunities and help us to kind of tap into some different areas, which is exciting. Can be a little bit scary. It might be, we might be taking too much on, but
back to that being uncomfortable, right?
yes, absolutely.
We might have to do a follow-up pod to let you know how it goes.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
We'll schedule. We'll be back. Perfect. What is a piece of advice that someone's given you that is worth repeating, or something that's kind of driven you?
I feel like I'm in a very fortunate situation to where I've gotten to work with my dad for, growing up, and then now coming back and working with him quite a bit. And so I feel like there's a ton of stuff that he tells me all the time that I, could probably just start listing stuff out. But also like from my grandparents were in the business. My granddad was is in the cattle business. My uncles on both sides of the family. And so I have a lot of people, and then just people that I've known my whole life that just, always have these little good one-liners. I think I was thinking about this, but collectively, I would have to say like one of the best pieces of advice that I could probably round up collectively from all those people, and that I see from people that have been successful and been able to be in this business for a long time, is really not, and my dad's like a pro at this, like not focusing on the bad things that happen, like trying to, something bad happens, get exposed to it, learn from it, and just quickly move on from it, in order to not keep you from missing out on an opportunity. And I would say that's, he would always say something like, well, I don't know if he ever says it. He just says, I'll tell him about something bad that happened. He's like quick to move on because he doesn't want to get too bogged down by it. And then, another guy that I think a lot of who's been a good mentor for me, his name's Ed Wright. And a lot of people on this podcast would know him, but he told me one day a while back, he said they never regretted any decision that he had made because, one way or the other, he learned from it. And so that's, to me, something that I have to consciously think about pretty often, to not get too bogged down by the bad things and, look for more opportunity.
It's a really stressful industry, to be in, and especially with what the market's been doing over the last several years. We came in a really interesting time, I feel like, when Garrett came back and started really diving into things with his dad of, between COVID and ever since then, there's been a lot of volatility in the markets, and, people having to make, gut decisions on what they're doing. And so I think that is a really, really good one to focus on, because, you can focus pretty heavily on the negatives or focusing on what went wrong and letting that keep you from making risks. And in the cattle business, you have to be willing to take some risks in order to continue to grow and make money and keep doing what you're doing.
It's a daily gamble. I mean, as much as you try to avoid, make your chances better, it's just a daily gamble, anything you do. I mean, you have a rainstorm come through and a lightning strike could get some of your cattle. I mean, it's just, you never know, but you have certain things in place that help, alleviate those bad times or bad things that help, and then, just move on, try to make it up on the next deal. So
something that I've always heard you repeat was, I remember your grandpa, like when we started the business, you would always say, that your grandpa had said the best time to go broke is
while you're young, yeah.
is in your 30s.
But now I have a different,
or before or maybe it was before you were 30, something like that. We started the meat business when we decided that we were gonna, invest substantially in it and get the store going. I was really nervous about that, and Garrett's like, Grandpa Lee always said the best time to go broke is in your 30s. So, then if it doesn't work out, we've got some time to shift and recuperate.
That's not the plan.
That's not the plan
No.
But I used to hear you say that a lot.
Yeah, I say it less now.
But it was a little bit of like, you've got to be when you're young, being willing to take some risks and put it all out there. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But, it becomes a lot harder to do that once you start, building a family and getting more established in certain areas of your life. It's, you kind of get out of that window of willingness to do it and whether it's smart to do it at that stage too. For me on the meat side, I just like Garrett, I feel like I've had a lot of like really great mentors, throughout my life in like college and different aspects of the industry. And when I was in the communications field, got to work with a lot of great people. And so I've had, a culmination of a lot of really good insights and input that I, use to steer the decisions that we're making in the business. But I think as a whole, something that I'm really leaning into more so recently at this stage that we're at is we had a friend that we've done, different aspects of business with over the years. And about a year in, he called me, just to kind of congratulate and say, hey, a lot of people are talking about you guys, hearing a lot of positive things. I've watched you guys grow this from the little trailer on the side of the road to what it is now. And like, super proud, just wanted to call and give you a pat on the back. That's awesome. But just to remember, and he had some phrase or one-liner that it was very notable because I remember I wrote it on my whiteboard in my office for a little while, and I can't remember what it was exactly, but essentially the gist was you've got to be comfortable with saying no, and turning down opportunities and saying no to things is sometimes the most important thing you can do to protect the success of your business. And when you're starting off any business, I think that's really hard to do. And it's still really hard to do because you get excited about, when it's your own business and you're an entrepreneur and you've built something, you want to say yes to everything. Every opportunity for the most part sounds cool and exciting and could be the next big thing for you. Or it could not. And so early on, I think there's no way to avoid that. Like you end up saying yes to everything and spreading yourself really thin and getting out there. And that's part of it of, one, trying to do everything you can to pay the bills and make it make sense financially. But then two, you want to kind of figure out, what's the avenue I really want to focus on. But we're getting to a stage now where I'm really starting to take that advice in and apply it a little bit more about, there's been some things that we've done in the past or said yes to year after year where we've just got too many irons in the fire, or, looking at it on paper, it's not something that is adding to the business, or it's very profitable, or it may be something that, we're just, none of us are really that passionate about. And we've got other things that we want to try or focus on. So being comfortable, kind of bowing out of some areas or just outright saying no, which for me, that's hard in general.
Oh, yeah.
You want to say yes, you want to participate in everything, but the reality is you just can't. And so learning to make those decisions wisely and figure out what works for you, the areas that you want to be in, and kind of riding in those lanes.
Yeah, and trust that no, right?
Yes.
Of all that. Yeah, I think the risks you guys take and the willingness to spread yourself thin and all of that is all a really important part, right? And I try and explain to people because when we're at high schools or colleges and we're trying to explain that your margins are thin, your risks are high, but they do it for a reason, right? And again, there's like, you could find all the negatives, right? Mm-hmm. I won't list any negatives necessarily, but what does make you keep going? Why do you take those risks? Why do you spread yourself thin?
Sometimes I wonder.
We all do. We really ask this question to ourselves a lot.
I think my dad puts it best. It's like, we do this because that's what we know how to do, and that's what our family's done, and that's how we grew up. That's how he grew up. That's how I grew up. And so we just keep pushing forward. And I think we all I think both of us kind of come from a background where it's like, don't back down to things. And like we were talking about earlier, if you're uncomfortable, that's when you start to feel like, well, maybe I'm going in the right direction. And so I think that's why we keep pushing forward. Sometimes like the expansion part and wanting to push and do more, I think that's more of an addiction than anything else. But it's an adrenaline, like maybe a little bit of an adrenaline rush when you get into something new and it's exciting and getting rolling into it. And then there's times you're like, golly, yeah, we bit off quite a bit. But then you always, you'll figure it out. I mean, you just have the right people to help you and the right people around you and just work through the problem and get it done.
Well, and I think on the cattle side too, I mean, I think to your point of your dad saying, it's what we do, it's what we've always done. I think big picture, what that encompasses is like generationally, they've continued to grow and build off of the business. And that's what I think we're pushing for now. We've got a 1-year-old, and so a lot of the decisions and Garrett getting into the Simmental side of things, and that's going to funnel into probably a calf crop that she'll be able to show.
Future show calves,
show calves for her down the road, and so I think on a day-to-day these decisions are continuing to build off of what his dad and his grandpa and his uncles and everybody has built over the years, and us continuing to do that and hopefully be able to pass that on generationally.
And there's not every industry do you talk about that, right? It comes to family is always brought up on the podcast. Family is always brought up when you have cattlemen sitting around or beef industry folks. And so I think that's really special. There's not every industry is like that to do it for that generational family, that family legacy. It's really special.
Yeah.
I admire it greatly.
On the meat side, I would say, all of those things. Like I would love, if Scotty, when she grows up, if she wants to take over the meat business, great. If she wants to work with dad in the feed yard, great. If she wants to do something completely different, that's, totally fine too. But for me, like one thing that's really gratifying is, people will compliment us on, they love the beef or they love the quality of the product, which is great. That's awesome. Obviously we take a lot of that feedback and those compliments to heart, but I think it's the culmination of everything that we've created at the store between the quality product, the entire shopping experience when people come in, and the customer service. And I've loved watching the relationships that my employees have built with people in the community. And how often I get like texts or calls or messages on Facebook or Google reviews where they're like, yeah, your meat's great, or we love shopping at your store, but they'll call out an employee specifically that they just absolutely love the conversations they have with them every week or how well they treat them. And so watching those relationships form and the connections that we're able to build with the community, that's been something for me that's been, really cool. As we come off of really busy holiday seasons, it's that like sense of community, seeing all of those people come in there and connect. And so that's been really neat.
Yeah, I think it's connected. Like, I grew up here, and Megan probably knows more people than me in the community now, just because she has so many people coming in and sees their face every single day. And so the community part of it's been really cool, because you just get exposed to a lot more people within the community that you're not doing business with necessarily on the cattle side. And so I feel like the community exposure has been pretty neat, and getting to just meet a lot more people. I feel like we're a lot more involved in the community now because of the meat company. It kind of
just having a local retail
gives you
business.
a bigger connection to the community. So,
and I mean, doesn't our world need more of that, right? Just the word community in general, right? We just need more of that. So that's really,
absolutely. I mean, it's
really
funny.
special.
I laugh because like we even have some people that will just stop in, not because they're coming. They're like, I don't need anything. I just hadn't seen you guys in a while, and I was just gonna. Yeah, I saw that you were here, and I was gonna stop in and say hi. And I'm like, I love that. Like, by no means do you have to come in and shop, but yeah, we love seeing those guys' faces on a regular basis.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I'm guilty. I love an online shopping and a convenience experience and all of that. But the more we can be face to face, see people, and have a reason to, that's pretty special. That store adds that community into your lives. I've stopped in, but I don't come to Clovis as often as I should. Okay, so just kind of anything else question before I ask you my last question. But yeah, is there anything else that you wanted to add, or anything you want people to take away about your business, about the beef industry, just in general? Were there anything you wanted to add?
I guess I would just say that I don't know if I've touched on it enough. Is just that the biggest aspect to, like how my dad started his business and how we've been able to grow the cattle business is just with the people that we do stuff with. I mean, it's about finding the right people to partner on cattle with, or run cattle with, and the right people to come to work for you. And, things get a lot easier when you have just good people that care, helping you out. And so that's a key part of it. And, back to the, the advice or line that Dad's always said, is when you're in business, is if everybody's the goal is for everybody involved to be making money, and that makes everything move forward, and then that expands upon more business. And that's just by having good people. You can only get so much done in a day without having the right people around you. So that would be my biggest thing. I think that's kind of transcended into the meat store as well. I mean, it has for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we've had some employees come and go, but we've had a really strong core team that started with us from the very beginning. Some of them have had experience in the meat industry, some of them haven't. Our focus has always been more so on hiring really good people with, good character traits, ones that are honest, trustworthy, reliable, good people to be around. Especially because, our last name is on the sign. When I made the logo for the meat business, I had made the Tim Foote Cattle logo for Tim when I was in college in my logo design class. So I stole the Foote font and portion of that.
We're still
so that
working
we would,
on a trademark suit.
Yeah. just because he had a lot of brand awareness around the cattle side. And so we piggybacked off of that. But, so then that then puts a lot of pressure on us on how the meat business, with it being something that, Garrett and I started on our own, the decisions that we make there could have a trickle down or a whether positive or negative effect on Tim's business as well, and the reputation that he's created, over all of these years. And so we don't take that lightly, and try to make good decisions from the business side of things, but also from the employee side as well. And, making sure that we've got people in there that are representing us well. And I think we do. We've got really passionate people that are passionate about what they do and the long-term success of our business. And that is, we wouldn't be able to do it without them, by no means.
I love that. Very, very gracious and very true, right? Good humans first.
Yep.
If you can find good humans,
and
to
they'll
do
probably
things
be
with.
listening, so it was a good time to drop.
Yeah,
There you go. Yeah.
No,
Shout out. Don't name names,
hope,
or you might forget
I
one.
hope they know how much we appreciate them,
that was a
but
joke.
they're the glue that keeps everything going for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
And it allows us to have a little bit of a life too, because we tend to get too many things going on, and so sometimes it's important to be able to step away. But you can't do that if you don't have people that you trust, that are competent and care as much about your business as you do, and that are dependable and willing to really show up when they say they're going to.
Oh yeah, you can teach people, skills. You can teach them how to use a computer. You can teach them knife skills. You can teach them, whatever feeding skills or anything. But you can't teach character, right? That comes first. So
character and work ethic.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that's something that is, I guess I worry about a little bit as, time goes on generationally. I think we've had some really great interns that have come in, but I think there is a little bit of a gap on the working side as far as, the generationally what work means to people.
You're starting to sound old. When you
I
start
know.
saying words like
I
generation,
feel really old
stuff like that.
saying that.
Golly.
Well,
we're gonna get cats next week.
I had an intern that came in, they're like, "You're a millennial, aren't you?" And I'm like, what have I done or said that is like really pinpointed that for you?
Yeah, I realized some of our friends aren't millennials. They're younger than us, and I didn't realize how much younger they were. And we figured out that they're the next generation, and I went, oh, Okay. Yep. I'm gotten to a certain age
we
now.
were born in the 1900s.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I think I do have hope when I see young people in agriculture. I do have hope for the next generation in some ways. Like you said, there's some interns and there's some beef ambassadors here in Curry County that are super impressive. I'm hopeful.
And passionate. I think about passionate about the industry, passionate about what they're doing, and we get a lot of young people that come in and work for us, whether it's on the meat cutting side or looking to grow their skill set on like the business or communication side or marketing. For the summer, they may do like a during semester internship, but just how eager they are to learn and ask questions. And that's one thing I always tell them when they come in is like, no question is a dumb question. Like, we're so excited to be able to, my guys love sharing their wealth of knowledge on the retail side and get so excited when somebody is like actually eager to learn and learn more about that. And I know Garrett feels that way too, whenever on the cattle side, whenever they're bringing, young cowboys in and stuff, and they're eager to dive in and learn more about what they're doing on the operation. It's always refreshing and it's exciting.
Oh, absolutely. And it even goes, if we talk about the generational thing of we've gotten further and further away from where our food comes from, right? And so some of those core values that we learned about, that family is first and that we're not eating till the cows eat, or whatever the sayings are, that you build that work ethic and all of that. And so it is hard sometimes. The further we get away from where our food comes from, the harder it is to see that. But hopefully,
put that into perspective.
Yeah.
But that next generation will be the one that brings the technologies just continues to grow on the ag side, and it'll be the next generation. I mean, I'd like to think we're kind of tech savvy. I mean,
yeah, but I just
the next generation
absolutely.
will be the ones that really advance the technology in ag.
Absolutely. Like, just thinking about how far like AI has come in the last couple of years, and how, whether it's on the ag side or the business side of things, like every vendor or person that we work with, whether it's, meat suppliers or a point of sale system or accounting systems, it's like everybody every week, I feel like I'm getting an email of like, hey, we're beta testing this new AI system. So AI is like integrated and ingrained in everything that we're doing now. And so I think that's only going to continue to be the case, but it's happening so much more rapidly than technology has evolved for us. Even in the last, 5 to 10 years, we're seeing it change much more quickly in a year to 2 years.
Absolutely. I couldn't do my job without at least a little bit of AI. And the artificial intelligence one, I'm grateful for modern technology. Grateful for modern technology. I like to say modern medicine and food choice, right? We live in a great spot where we are.
Clarify that instead of artificial.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking a different kind. But I guess our hope is that listeners are consumers that aren't as familiar. But I think the truth is a lot of listeners are in the industry, and so I think about. I think sometimes my job as the host is to work on those acronyms. Yeah, but that's not an acronym we have to explain nowadays. It usually only means one thing to most people.
AI is big too.
On both sides.
Both sides.
Yeah, honestly. We talked about genetics, right? So, well, cool. Well, I think I appreciate you guys and talking about all of that. We've covered so many things. My favorite question is, what is your current favorite way to eat beef, or a favorite recipe, or your favorite cut? Anything, just what's the favorite? It doesn't have to be the forever favorite, but
I love when people ask that, because I feel like everybody typically thinks like ribeye, filet, strip, and her
answer is going to be bougie.
Bougie. I love a good ribeye, but I mean, I'm around meat all the time, all day, and so I'm always trying to switch it up and bring something different home, or I'll get sick of one thing and get in a season where I want to eat something else. But one thing that I've been loving a lot right now, and that we're selling a ton of in the store, are culotte steaks. So culotte or picanha, depending on regionally where you're from. Also known as the top butt sirloin roast. It's a really good one. It's got a rich beefy flavor. It's tender. The portion sizes are great. Love to just throw those on the grill really quick and use some like chimichurri dipping sauce. I love anything vinegar based. Chimichurri is my favorite. So that's a good one. I also really like the sirloin flap or the bavette steaks. That's a unique one that we put out. We use it for a lot of different things in the store. It goes into our fajita meat. We cut them into like thin sliced carne asada. Those would be two of my favorites.
What else do we have too much of in the store?
Yeah,
To
that's
plug in, right?
trying to promote.
I'm
As
pretty
you
simple.
should.
Like a ribeye on the grill with seasoning. I guess would be my go-to, my kind of sleeper meal, and one that Megan doesn't really like that I like it this much, but I think it's gonna be great later on as we have more kids. I love Hamburger Helper. I could eat it about 7 days out of the week. I'm big fan of it. It heats up just as good.
When he says he loves hamburger, he loves Hamburger Helper.
Yeah.
Actually, it's a great use of ground beef, to be honest. I even like to make my own version of Hamburger Helper, right? Of just like I have pasta and add beef.
See, I'd be more excited about it if he was open to it. He loves the
Brand name Hamburger Helper.
Hamburger Helper.
Yeah.
Don't get crazy. Don't add anything to it. Keep it simple.
Don't fix what's not broke.
I mean, it's lasted generations and decades, but that's perfect. I actually did buy some recently because we were talking to someone brought it up the other day, and so I did buy some recently. It's a staple, but yeah, it's a little different than a bavette.
I told you he was gonna be bougie.
Yeah. Whatever the opposite of that was your answer, right? I digress. Well, if there's nothing else, I would just want to say thank you so much for being willing to be on the podcast, and more importantly, thank you for the work you do to help feed the world and to care for the land and the livestock. It's really important, and from my perspective and from it should be all of our perspective, just thank you for being willing to take that risk, and being willing to try new things and then also tell the story. So thank you again, and thanks for being on the podcast.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us. Eat beef and wreck 'em.
Behind the Burger is a podcast produced by the New Mexico Beef Council with the goal of telling the stories of the cattlemen and cattlewomen of the New Mexico beef industry. Thank you for joining us for today's episode. If you would like more information, please visit nmbeef.com. Whether it be a burger, a steak, or another beef dish, we hope you are enjoying beef at your next meal.